Jesus' name. Amen. Finished with the Sermon on the Mount, so I'm not going back to that. But I wanted to take an Old Testament book, a small one, called the Book of Ruth. And I call this Ramblings in Ruth. You know, just going down looking at Ruth. So we're going to look at one chapter at a time, so this will take at least 4 sessions with me. So we're going to look at the first chapter today. Ruth is a very interesting book. And the first thing is, you ask yourself, why was this book written? It's obviously written after David. Do you know why? Very simple. It gives you the genealogy to David, doesn't it? So therefore it's got to be written after David was born at least. But they say it's further than that because what had happened is that people were starting to challenge David's reputation as a king because he is of mixed descent, having a Moabitess great-great-grandmother in his line. But in the end, at the end of it, it says this. It says, and Boaz begets Obed, Obed begets Jesse, and Jesse begets David. Now the word begets means give birth to. They are the fathers of. So these are the generations, and it ends up showing us where this family fits in, where Ruth fits in, and also Boaz fits into the story. And we're going to look at that as we go along because it's very interesting. And my thesis or my comment here is simply this, is that if you want to have a David-type person, you need a Boaz-type family. And you need a Ruth-type experience. And so that is what we're going to be looking at, and it's a generational issue that we're looking at here. When God moves, it is not necessarily one generational. He starts with someone. But it is, in this case, he starts with Boaz, or even before that. But it takes 4 generations for a David to appear on the scene. And so often we look at what God wants to do with us. But I think we should be thinking more, what does God want to do with my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren? Because that is the focus we need to have if we are to see quality people rising in the kingdom of God. Can I have an amen? Amen. So, let's start it off. Ruth is a book, the only book in the Bible that is written about a woman who is not a Jew. It is a unique book. It is called her name, and it is about a non-Jewish woman. And that's the interesting thing. Secondly, this book is always read in the synagogues and in the temple at Pentecost. Every Pentecost, they sit down and read the book of Ruth from beginning to end. That is the story that they talk about at Pentecost. Thirdly, even scholars who are not Christians, who are atheistic, say the book of Ruth is one of the best literary documents around. It is a quality document, and it's a very, very good story to read. So if you haven't read it, we're going to do it. What we're going to do, if you've got your Bibles, turn to the first chapter of Ruth, and we're going to read the whole chapter. So at the end of this 4 sessions, you will have read the whole book of Ruth. It starts off and says, in the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. And a certain man of Bethlehem in Judah who went to live in the country of Moab, he and his wife and 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. These took Moabite wives. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other was Ruth. When they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and so the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband. Then she started to return with her daughter-in-laws to the country, from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had considered his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she had been living, she and her 2 daughter-in-laws, and they went on their way to go back to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her two daughter-in-laws, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you." Lost my place. "May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find security, each of you in the house of your husband." Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud. They said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Who will go with me? Do I still have sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. Even if I thought there was hope for me, even if I should have a husband tonight and bear sons, would you then wait until they grew up? Would you then refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, it has been far more bitter for me than for you, because the hand of the Lord has turned against me." Then they wept aloud again. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. So she said, "See, your daughter-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not press me to leave you or turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. There I will be buried. May the Lord do this and so to me, and more as well, if ever death parts me from you." When Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. So the two of them went out until they came to Bethlehem. When they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the woman said, "Is this Naomi?" She said to them, "Call me no longer Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has dealt harshly with me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" So Naomi returned together with Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, who came back with her from the country of Moab. They came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. You know, this is the first chapter. It's one thing about Ruth, it has one of the best pictures of conversion you could ever find in the Bible. It is quality conversion. And I want to say this, the quality of a conversion has a great bearing on where a person is going to go. If you don't have a quality conversion, then you will struggle in many aspects of your life. If you have a quality conversion, you will find that things will move so much smoother. You know, I remember in my own life, if I look at it, when was I impacted by God? You know, it wasn't at a meeting in a church. I had grown up in the church. I went to a Presbyterian church all my life. Only problem is I never once heard the gospel message at that church. I went to a Christian school, and there I heard the gospel message, and I heard it many times. And in fact, I have already said the sinner's prayer with one of my teachers. And so technically I had become a Christian, but I had no reality of God in my life. And I really, first time I met God was through a person. I can't remember her name. If I met her today, I doubt if I'd even recognize her. But we were on Stewart Island. This is there's three major islands in New Zealand, the North Island, the South Island, and then one below the South Island called Stewart Island. And we had gone for 2 weeks, a group of young people who were into birds. And so it was part of called the Royal Forest and Bird Protection Society. And so we were down there for 2 weeks. It was an interesting holiday. I enjoyed it. The first day was lovely and sunny. The last day was lovely and sunny. Every other day rained. But we went out and we crossed the island in the mud and the rain. But what really impacted me was I was sitting down at the beach with one young girl. Well, she was young and I was young, about the same age. Maybe she was slightly older. And she started to talk to me. And suddenly I realized this girl knew, she lived what I only knew. And it just staggered me. And it was something like an attraction in this girl that I could not understand. And I remember her saying one thing to me, and it's held me for so many years. She said, David, God never takes anything from your life unless he's got something far better to put in its place. That was a rhema word to me. And I had a reality of God in that, just that time of talking. And it was, I knew she had something. I knew God was in the situation. And I had never experienced God before, but I have now. And she gave me one book, and it's an old book. It's called The Cross and the Switchblade. It's a book about the gangs in New York and God moving amongst the gangs in New York in the time when it was really challenging. And I'm a hopeless reader because I'm dyslexic, so I don't read much at all. But I picked that book up and I read it till 2 o'clock in the morning, and I finished it. And it impacted my life. That was an experience that changed my life. Not just reading a book, but the fact that in that time God was there, and I recognized God was there, and he spoke to my life through a person. And if you look at Ruth and her decisions and what she does here, it comes out of the fact that she had a personal impact in her life through her mother-in-law of all people. So you look at it, but before we start on that story, I want to say this, that we need to understand the story by understanding how people thought at that time, and it's important. In their world, your identity is a corporate identity, not an individualistic identity. And your identity is found in the land that you have, in the family that you belong to, and the God that you serve. Those three things, remember it? The land you belong to, or you have, the family you belong to, and the God you serve. Those three things make your identity. So when you leave your land, you leave your family, and you leave your God, it is the worst thing you can ever do. Because you are walking away from everything and you become a traitor to the community that you've left. So just keep that in mind. So you say, well, what about Naomi and Elimelech when they left? Are they leaving their land? Are they leaving their family? Are they leaving their God? And the answer to that is no, because if you read it in the Hebrew, what it tells you about them is when they go to Moab, they are going as, let me find it, as temporary aliens. That's the terminology that's used. It's not that they actually are abandoning their land. They still hold and own their land back in Bethlehem. And you'll find that out in the next chapter, or sorry, the 3rd or 4th chapter. So they still own their land. They are still following Yahweh, their God, even while they are in Moab. They haven't abandoned him, and they are still linked to family. So they are not abandoning everything. They are temporary aliens. You could consider them as economic refugees. You know, we don't like economic refugees. You've got to be a genuine refugee to come to this country. I honestly don't know the difference, to be honest. But these are famine in their own land, so they leave to go somewhere else where they can survive, economic refugee. But they are temporary aliens only. And so they're in this situation. Why do we know they are still following their God? Simply, there's both Ruth and Orpah say, we will go with you. Why would they leave everything just to follow their mother-in-law? Usually relationship between daughter-in-laws and mother-in-laws are not exactly the strongest, are they? Isn't that true? They're not the strongest. So here are two girls that when their husbands are gone, they say, we're going to follow you back to your country. We're going to leave everything that we have and go with you. It tells you something of what Orpah, so Naomi, is like. It gives you some idea of her life with God as well. You see, she's just gone through 3 major tragedies. She loses her husband. She loses her 2 sons, and she has lost everything. Why then does Naomi want to follow a person who has gone through tragedy after tragedy after tragedy? In many of our cultures, she's got bad luck. Therefore, we wouldn't follow her. Isn't that right? It's a bad luck. Look at her life, all the things that have gone wrong. So why then would she follow Naomi? You see, when we live our Christian faith and our Christian life, it's easy to do it when everything goes well, isn't it? Not hard to be happy when everything's nice. It's not hard to, live in faith when everything's going well. But when the tragedy hits our lives, that really shows what really is in our hearts and lives. You think of Job, when he is stripped of everything, what does he do? He continues to follow his God. Even though he goes through horrific things, he continues to keep his heart right before God. That is the time when your life becomes impressive to those round about you. When we, and this is a slang term, when we spit the dummy, do you know what I mean by that? Something goes wrong and we just explode and we lash out and we do those things. People don't follow that, they get away from that, don't they? You don't follow that sort of person. There is something about Naomi after her tragedies and in her tragedies that Ruth and Orpah see and say, we want to follow that. I wonder today whether we are that sort of person, whether we are ones who are open the door for God to move. People have got to have an encounter with the God of Israel, or our God. And where do they get that encounter? It is through people who actually express what God is like. That we walk as having the image of God. And they see that, and it starts to do something in their life. And so these 2 young ladies start on a journey. Now you can say this is the start of conversion. I want to say this, conversion is a journey, it is not an event. The first part of the journey is that they see something in their mother-in-law and say, she's got something, I wonder if I can have that. I want to emulate my life after this woman. And so this is the beginning of the journey. So they go and they start on a journey to go back to Bethlehem because Naomi says, God again is blessing my people. I will go back to what I had back there. And so they say, we will come along, and both of them come. But on the way of the journey, Naomi tells them to go back. I find this most interesting. I've never had an altar call where people have come up and then the guy's got there and says, now look, you should go back and sit down and not be up here because this. And give them all the reasons why they shouldn't be giving their lives to Jesus. We don't do that, do we? We say, come great, taste and see that the Lord is good. And we want people to come, but Naomi does exactly the opposite. She says she tries to discourage these 2 women. I find that interesting. I'm not saying we should do that, but I'm saying that there comes a time in the journey towards God that you have to actually understand what it's all about. You have to realize that it's not going to be my way. It has to be God's way. That the things that I come for God, someone said this, and I think it's true, 90% of the people who come to faith in God come for the wrong reason. 90% of us come for the wrong reason. Some people say, well, I just knew that I wasn't satisfied in my life, and I came because I needed that satisfaction in God. That's not the right reason. But most of us come, I came for that reason. My life was empty. But if something doesn't happen down the track, and that's the only thing we have, we will be like Orpah. We will turn back. We need to have what Ruth had. Amen? Are you with me? No one dropping off to sleep yet? I'm watching the eyelids, some are fluttering. Okay. You see, despite the tragedies to Naomi, they saw something of this God that she served, Yahweh, or Jehovah. You know, we sang a song today, there is no God like Jehovah. We sing it. Do we understand it? There is no God like Jehovah. She worshipped, or the Moabites worshipped another God. It's Chemosh. Chemosh. Chemosh is the God of the Moabites. Sounds like cheese and moose. Chemosh. You see, she grew up in a world where you worshipped the local God. But if it wasn't working out, you just choose another God and worship that. And if that one didn't help you, you choose another one and worship that. And it's like, if it doesn't work out with this one, try another one. There are many gods you can worship, but the Chemosh God was the top one in the Moabitist community. That was the number one. Whereas Naomi comes from a faith where you worship one God and one God only. You know, many of us come from a background where we have that mentality. I always am interested when Chinese New Year comes around. The temples are full of people going to them to worship once a year. And you ask them, why are you doing this? And they say, well, it gives me good luck. Or if I don't do it, bad luck may come to me. Things may not go well if I do not worship this God, if I do not give what should be given. And it's like we're worshipping Chemosh or one of the other gods, because we are doing it because we want that God to give us good luck or not give us bad luck. And the issue is that we haven't yet understood who Yahweh or Jehovah really is. So they look upon this lady who does not change gods but worships only one God through good and through disaster. She is committed to this God. They start to realize that also her God is committed to her. There is a covenant relationship that she has with her God. And so they start the journey. And as you look, as they're going on this journey, there comes a place where the challenge is put down. Why are you coming on this journey? You realize that the things you are maybe looking for, you may never see them happen. They are young girls, possibly married at the age of 13. 10 years on, they are 23. They are in the prime of their life. They are not old women. They are young women. And like most young women of the day, to be fulfilled, you should have children. And here, if I follow this route, I may never, ever have children. Because, you see, to follow Naomi, it means this. Firstly, when you come into the land of Israel, you are an illegal alien. The Moabites were not allowed by law to come and live in Israel. It is against the law to do that. So she becomes illegal. No status. Secondly, she is a foreigner, therefore she is of low status. Thirdly, she is a Moabitess. Now, you know the reputations of the Moabite women? When Balak asked Balaam to come and prophesy against the children of Israel. Balak is the Moabite king of the time. This is when the children of Israel were coming into the land. And he says, I don't want these people here. I want to bring the curse of their God on them. So he gets the prophet Balaam to come and to prophesy against them. So he gets there, the prophet, and then he prophesies the blessing of God on Israel. And the king looks at him and said, I didn't ask you to do that. I asked you to prophesy a curse on them. And he says, I cannot do what God's not going to do. And 3 times he prophesies God's blessing on them. So the king's not happy, obviously. And so he says, I can't change that, but he said, I can show you how you can bring the curse of God. He said, send your women down amongst the Israelites and entice them to come back and worship your God, Chemosh. And they did that, and as long as that, also adultery and all these things occurred. And that brought the curse of God. So the Moabitess women are not noted for being women of high reputation. And so she's going into a place where she's going to be looked at, oh, she's one of those Moabites. And therefore she goes to a place of low reputation. Who is going to want to marry one of those sort of people? So here they are going into this land. This is what is laid out before her. Orpah looks at it and says, this is not going to accomplish what I want to accomplish. So eventually she starts the journey. Eventually she comes to a place, says, no. The result, or the end result of what I consider, it's not going to be good for my life. Therefore, I will turn and go back to my own gods, my own family, and my own land. You know, why did you decide to become a Christian? Because you were going to get a better life? Was that what was presented, that the life was going to be so much better, so much fantastic, and all the good things that you were going to get? You know, that if you come to God, He's going to bless you abundantly. Naomi was blessed, wasn't she? With the death of her husband, with the death of her 2 sons. You know, if you come on that basis, I guarantee down the track you are going to be disappointed. Because it's not about the blessings. Now, you read the story, what God does. But if you come expecting that this is what this life is going to be all about, you will be disappointed. And your conversion will not be a strong conversion. You will have trouble down the track. I have seen many, I've been preaching and pastoring for over 40 years, around that. And I have seen people come for different reasons, and along the track you see those who have come with the wrong reasons eventually turn and go another way. And you ask yourself, could you do better? How could have I helped that person? And the reality is, the very foundation was not correctly done. Don't ever blame someone else for the fact that you backslid or turned away from God. It is all there in your heart at the beginning. So we see Orpah. She turns and she goes back. But Ruth stays and she clings on to Naomi. And I love this because it's in the literature, they say in the Hebrew, as you read it, it flows well. Then it comes to this part and it's like bullet points, bang, 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 bang. It's stiletto. It all changes the way it's read and everything. And so you really need a good reader here. I'm not a good reader. And it just so stands out, this part of what she is saying. And it's one of the greatest declarations of conversion. This part. And this is what I want to look at now. If I can get back to my notes. Sorry up the back if I'm, the translators, if I'm going all over the place. So, yes. Let's just read it. In verse 16 and 17, do not press me to leave you or turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. There will I be buried. May the Lord do this and so to me and more as well, if even death parts me from you. She first says, do not press me to turn back. You know, that statement is, or the word used in the Hebrew is and also the Greek is the same word we use in the New Testament for the word convert. It is the word where do not cause me to, or turn around and go in the other direction. It's that word. And she's saying, do not cause me to convert from what I'm already doing, which is following you. In other words, it's not convert to Christ, to convert to go back away from you. So do not do that. I am not going to turn back from where I am going. There is something of a commitment regardless. She knows the consequences. She knows that she will be a legal immigrant. She knows that she will have the status of a foreigner. She knows her reputation as a Moabitess will be below everyone else. She understands this. But she says, do not cause me to turn back. Because she has seen something of what Naomi's God is all about. And she said, this I want. You know, Jesus had a parable where he talks about a pearl of great price being hidden in a field, and the person who finds that, he sells everything to buy that field. This is the heart of Naomi. She sees something in Naomi and her God, and she says, I will give up everything that I have to have what she has. That's the value, or that's the heart of conversion. That will go places. And so we see that, the first thing. And then she names 3 things that she is going to give up. First thing she says, I am never going to leave you. And she says, I will exchange my land for your land. Remember I said there's 3 identities in this world. What gives you your identity is your land, your family, or your people, and thirdly, it is your God. So first he says, I will go with you. I will give up my land. I am giving up that identity. I will never be able to come back when I do that. She is cutting the bridges like no one can ever cut them, because what she's going to do will make her despised by her people and a traitor to her community. She can never go back. You know, I wish in our conversions we were like that we can do them in such a way that we actually can never turn back when the going gets tough. You know, they say when the going gets tough, the tough get going. No, when the going gets tough, we all want to run the other way. That's the honest truth. But here she breaks the bridges. The first thing she says, I am giving up my land. The second thing she says, what? Your people will be my people. So what she says is that I am giving up my community, my family, everything that I have in relationship to embrace this new community, which is Naomi's. And the third thing she said, your God will be my God. Now, it's interesting. In this part she said, your Elohim will be my Elohim. Elohim is the general word for God. You know, when we say, hands up those who love God. And everyone put, yes, I love God. We haven't defined which God we're talking about. You know, is it the God of the Islam worship, or is it the God, one of the gods the Hindus worship? Which God are we talking? Which God is it? And she starts off and said, your God will be my God. She doesn't say, I'll add your God to my gods. Because she's a pluralistic, where Naomi is a singular. She worships only one God. She never says, I will add your God to my God. She said, your God will be my God. I'm going to embrace what you have, is that I worship only one God, and it will be the one that you worship, is what she's saying. So she has seen something in Naomi, and she says, I will embrace what you are doing. And then after that she says, and it's in the English, and let's just read it. Let me find it. May the Lord do this and so to me, and more as well, if ever death parts me from you. You know, the Lord there, she didn't say the word Lord, she said, and may Yahweh do to me. So she's no longer talking the general term of your God, my God. She knows who Naomi's God is, and she declares it, may Yahweh do to me worse than she's done to you if I back down on this commitment that I am making today. That's what she is saying. And so she knows this God through the life of Naomi, and she's saying, what I've seen I will embrace. You know, I know people who've been in church, and they've sit in our church for even years and watched us before they made the decision to follow Jesus. They were looking to see what our God was like. And I trust that we will express really what he's like, so that people will make a decision that has strength because of our lives. Amen? And so you see here that Ruth declares the exchanging of her land for Naomi's land, the exchanging of her family for Naomi's family, the exchanging of her God for Naomi's God. She has totally cut off the past. She is saying, this is no more. I am now rejected by my people. I am rejected by my gods. I can never go back. I have become a traitor. That's what it was in her days. She made one of the most amazing conversion commitments. And then she says, where I die, where you die, I will die. You know, it's not just, Naomi, I'm with you all the way. When you pass on, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I can go back maybe. No, she's there to the very end. Where you die, I die. You see, in this world, where you die is just as important where you live. Because you die in the place which is your land. Abraham, when he came into the land of Canaan, you know one of the first things he did? Is he bought a plot of land as a burial place for his family. Because he says, this is my land. I'm going to have a place where we can be buried in our land. And so he is buried there. Isaac is buried there. Jacob goes down to Egypt. You know what happens when he dies? And it actually tells you all this. When he dies, they bring him up to Canaan and they bury him in that place. All the three patriarchs are all buried in the same place in the land of Canaan. Joseph, when he is dying, he says to the people, to his sons, he says, to the Israelites, he said, I know there's coming a time when you're going to go back to the land of Canaan. Take my bones and bury me in that place. You know, when they came out of Egypt, they brought the bones of Joseph to be buried in their land. You know, to be buried in that place, which is your land, was something of great importance. And so here's Naomi saying, Ruth saying, I don't want to be buried back in Moab. I will be buried in your land because it has become my land as well. An amazing story. So these are the three ingredients of what I can say of a fantastic conversion or a genuine conversion. That there is always an issue of not just accepting the God of Israel, Yahweh, and saying, yes, I'm going to follow Israel. I'm going to follow this God. It's going to be me and God, and we're going to have a great time, and God's going to bless me, and I'll fellowship in this church. All churches are the same. I'll fellowship with this one and that one. We'll have a great time, just me and God together. We've missed something, because there's three things that should happen. First one is we exchange gods. You say, well, I've never served a God. I'm an atheist. I said, you still serve a God, and that God is yourself. Because it's one, if you go back to the Garden of Eden at the beginning, what did the serpent say to Adam? He said, if you eat of this tree, you'll be like God, knowing good from evil. In other words, deciding what is good and evil. And that's what an atheist does. That's what we do as communities. We decide what is good and what is not good. We decide that gay marriage is fine, it's good. Because we are the ones that are making those decisions. We have become like gods. God himself has declared something completely different. But we decide. So every one of us follows a God, whether it is ourselves or a deity that is different to Yahweh. And so there is firstly an exchange of God that we need to do. We need to know who Yahweh is, who our God is, the God of our Lord Jesus Christ. Then there needs to be an exchange of family. For many of us who grew up in Christian homes, that's not a difficult thing because our families are all part of the household of faith. But when you come from a non-Christian family into the household of faith, you have the struggle. I have commitments and loyalties to my own family and also to the church. You see, Naomi had to make a choice which was first for her. And it was the household of Naomi. It actually was the community of Bethlehem. You see, it's not a matter of that as a Christian I have this amazing big family all over the world and I can have fellowship with everyone. No, you have to become committed and part of a community. Naomi So Ruth had to become part of the community in Bethlehem for this to work. And so there is an exchange of family. You know, I love the scripture in the New Testament that Jesus, when Jesus is speaking in Mark 10, 29 to 30, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, there is no one who has left house or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or fields for my sake and for the sake of the good news, who will not receive 100-fold now in this age, houses, brothers and sisters, mothers and children, and fields with persecutions, and in the age to come, eternal life." You know, this is a popular scripture by the people who, not the faith, prosperity. You know, brother, if you give up a house, God's going to give you 100-fold in this life. And I thought, wow, that sounds good. I'd like to have 100 houses. I'll rent out 99 and keep one for myself. You know, make lots of money. So I'll give my house up for that. I've never yet seen it happen. Because it is not, I've never heard the prosperity people say, brother, if you give up your sister, you're going to get 100 sisters. Or you give up your father, I'm going to give you 100 fathers. Whoa, I don't know if I want 100 fathers to feed. You know, it's hard enough with one, my sons say. So we take the bit that we want and we leave the bit we don't want, isn't it? See, it's not about that. It's about when you become part of this family, it is a family that is larger than what you lose. It is a community where you become part of. Brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, houses, lands. This is the community that we become part of. So there is an aspect in our conversion that we need to decide which family are we going to belong to. Because if we don't do it right, we will have a shaky conversion. I have seen it time and time again, especially when we come out of strong family commitments and there are strong obligations who are not walking with God. The challenge we have and the compromises that we are tested to do because we haven't decided which is our primary family. Amen? And so it's important that we do that. And the land started the overall. But what's the land? It's not Israel. You know why? One of the terms you get for Israel, for the nation of Israel, it's called the Holy Land or the Holy Place, isn't it? Why is it called the Holy Land or the Holy Place? It's because of all the different things that happen there. That, you know, it's all these relics. Is that why it's holy? No. You see, this is the Jewish understanding. He says that the land is holy because God dwells there. And we are the caretakers of that land. The land is in trust, but it is owned by God. So it is a holy place. It is the Holy Land. And the temple is in there. That's where God resides. But the land is holy because God, it belongs to God. And we are partakers or part of that. And our identity is in the fact that we are looking after the land that is God's. Now, how do you relate that to us? You know, in Hebrews 11, verse 16. And it goes through all the great men of faith. And then it says, but none of them received the promise. But then it tells you this, but as it is, that means these men of faith, desired a better country. That is, a heavenly one. Therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God. Indeed, he has prepared a city for them. These are the men of faith. And what were they looking for? Land, a heavenly country. And God says, because they are looking for that, I am not ashamed to be called their God. Not because of all their exploits and what they did and everything like that, because they were looking for a heavenly country. I'm not ashamed to be called their God. And I'm going to give them a heavenly city. You say, well, that's a bit cheap. They were looking for a country and all they got was a city. Don't you think so? Come on. You see, we look at a country like Australia. It's huge, isn't it? We look at a country like New Zealand. It's not as big, but it's still a good country. We look at Europe, many countries, and we think of that's what they were looking for. No. In the world they grew up, a country was a city with the surrounding land that they could control. I remember in Kathmandu, in the valley of Kathmandu, in the old time, there were 3 kingdoms in that valley. Isn't that correct? The Nepalese, isn't that correct? There are 3 kingdoms, and they are city-states, city and the surrounding country which serviced that city. That's the world. So when they are looking for a heavenly country, it would have been a city with the surrounding land. So God is not saying, I'm going to give you something smaller than what you were looking for. I am going to give you what you were looking for, a heavenly country. You see, Jesus came and he said, it's the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's a new kingdom. It's a new country that we are to be part of. So you cannot know real conversion if you are not prepared to become part of God's kingdom. It is not about your salvation. It's about the fact that God has touched your life, and I am going to embrace 3 things. I'm going to embrace this God. I'm going to embrace the family that is the expression of this God, and I am going to become part of his heavenly kingdom. That is what a conversion is all about. Ruth is by far the best illustration in the Bible of what it means to be converted. So we see this picture as we start off. And I want to say this as we're going on into the story. Not now, the next time I speak. You see, part of it is the family of Boaz. Part of it is also a person who has been converted like Ruth. You see, the foundations that we put into our lives don't just affect us, they're going to affect the generations to come. And because of the soundness of this woman's conversion, God is able to take her and to use her to become someone who sees a David raised up in the generations to come. So she's an important woman, not because she is attractive, and I guarantee she is, but because of the very heart of who she is and what she is prepared to do, not knowing anything of what's going to happen to her in the future. She has no idea. Her lot in life is to be a nobody. But she is prepared to be a nobody because she wants the God of Naomi. You know, as we contemplate this, there's just 2 things I want us to think about. All of us will go through crisis in our lives. It's what do people see in that time of crisis. Now, I want to say this, you know, it's not that we put a smile on our face and no one knows the crisis we're going through. That's unreal. We go through crisis and we get hurt, but there is also something of God that can be expressed at those times if we have allowed God to work in our lives. That impact people's lives. You know, which are we going to choose? That which impacts people's lives or that which makes us feel better? Often in those times we want to lash out and to hurt someone because we're hurting. You know what it does? It doesn't express anything of who God is. I want us to consider, when you were converted, did you receive a new God to add to your present lifestyle? Or have you embraced the family and the new country that goes along and is part of the whole conversion package? See, true conversion is not about me and God, but about God, his community, and his country. Let us pray. Father, I thank you that you have a plan, not just for us, but for the generations that follow. So, Lord, I just pray that we would build our lives on a firm, solid foundation that our conversions would be genuine, that we would say, yes, Lord, not just for what I want, but for what you want. That we may see rise within our family, not just the goodness of God, but the strength and the impact that God can have in lives because we said yes. Father, I thank you today in Jesus' name. Shall we stand as we close with a song?